It was a Wednesday morning when I received a letter. The envelope was simple, but as I opened it, my eyes scanned the words that would change my life. I was going to travel to another country. My heart raced. I had always dreamed of this moment, but now that it had arrived, a mix of happiness and uncertainty took over me. I told my family, and they were excited. My parents smiled with pride, and my siblings asked questions about the trip. But I didn't have all the answers yet. What would it be like to be away from home? What awaited me in this unknown place? As the days passed, excitement mixed with anxiety. Was I ready for this adventure? The day of the trip finally arrived. At the airport, everything felt big and confusing. People were walking hurriedly, speaking languages I didn't understand. I looked at the signs, trying not to get lost. My heart was racing. This was my first time out of the country. When I boarded the plane, I felt a nervous flutter in my stomach. The seat was cramped, and the sound of the safety instructions felt distant. As the plane took off, I looked out the window and saw the city getting smaller. A man next to me said something. I smiled, trying to seem calm, but I didn't understand a word. He laughed and nodded. I sighed, looking at the clouds. What awaited me in the new country? The plane landed smoothly, and through the window, I saw thousands of lights shining in the darkness. The city looked enormous, vibrant, different from everything I knew. The excitement was still there, but as soon as I stepped off the plane, the challenges began. The signs at the airport were confusing, and the voices around me spoke too fast. I tried to ask where to pick up my luggage, but the person just pointed without saying anything. After a few minutes of nervousness, I finally found my bag. In the taxi line, I ended up getting into a car without being sure of the right destination. The driver said something, but I just smiled. As the car moved through the illuminated city, I felt the reality of my adventure begin. I arrived at the hotel feeling a mix of exhaustion and relief. The receptionist smiled and started speaking too quickly. I tried to keep up, but the words seemed jumbled. After a few seconds of awkward silence, she pointed to a card and made a gesture with her hands. Finally, I understood it was my key. In the room, I threw my bag on the floor and went to the window. Outside, the streets were filled with lights, people talking, and cars honking. The unknown still scared me, but curiosity was stronger. I decided to go for a walk. The air had a different smell, a mix of food and coffee. The sound of the city was new, vibrant. I was truly in another world. The next morning, I woke up early, eager to explore the city. I walked slowly, taking in the tall buildings, crowded cafes, and colorful signs in a language that still seemed strange to me. Everything was new and fascinating. When I reached the park, I found a peaceful spot, different from the hustle and bustle of the streets. I sat on a bench and watched children playing, street musicians performing, and birds flying between the trees. An elderly woman approached and said something. I didn't understand, but she smiled and made hand gestures, as if drawing in the air. I laughed and tried to mimic her. In that moment, I realized that communication was so much more than just words. Full of energy, I decided to visit an old building that everyone said was a must-see. I walked there, admiring the impressive architecture. When I reached the ticket counter, I realized a problem. I didn't know exactly how to ask for a ticket. I tried pointing at the poster with the prices, but the attendant frowned, not understanding. My face turned red with embarrassment. Before I could try again, a man in line smiled and offered to help. He translated my request and even suggested the best places to visit first. Inside the building, I was amazed. The halls were enormous, and the paintings on the walls seemed to tell stories. I took a few photos, but soon put my phone away. I wanted to fully experience the moment. When I left the building, I continued exploring the city. The streets were busy, full of colors, aromas, and sounds. I decided to take public transportation to visit another tourist spot, but distracted, I got on the wrong line. When I got off, I realized I was in an unfamiliar neighborhood. My heart raced. For a moment, I thought about panicking, but I took a deep breath. I pulled out my phone and used a translation app to ask for help. A friendly old man smiled and explained the way back, pointing at a map. With effort, I was able to understand. As I made my way back, I smiled. I realized that even mistakes are part of the adventure. Getting lost was, in the end, just another way to discover. The next day, I went to a renowned museum. The line was long, but I didn't mind. While waiting, I observed the people around me, excited tourists, chatting families, curious children. Every face seemed to have its own story. When I entered, I was fascinated. The exhibits were amazing, detailed sculptures, ancient documents, and objects that seemed to carry centuries of history. What impressed me the most were the artifacts from ancient civilizations. I looked at them and imagined the hands that created them, the places where they were used. When I left, I felt something new. I wasn't just getting to know a different country, but also traveling through time, learning about humanity's past. After hours of walking, I stopped at a small cafe to rest. The aroma of fresh coffee and freshly baked bread filled the air, bringing a sense of comfort. I sat at a table by the window and opened my travel guide. As I flipped through the pages, a young woman at the table next to mine smiled and asked, in a gentle tone, if I needed any tips. She spoke slowly, choosing simple words. At first, I was nervous, but gradually, we were able to have a conversation. For the first time, I felt like I was a part of that place. Traveling wasn't just about visiting tourist spots, but also about meeting people and sharing moments, even if only in a few words. Back at the hotel, I lay down on the bed and let my mind wander. I thought about everything I had experienced in the past few days, the initial fear, the language difficulties, the small victories that kept me going. I realized that traveling wasn't just about seeing new things. It was about learning, adapting, growing. Every mistake, every conversation, every unexpected moment was part of the journey. I looked at my suitcase, ready for the next destination. Something inside me had changed. The unknown no longer seemed scary, but full of possibilities. I smiled and grabbed my phone. I can't wait to tell you everything, I wrote to my family. I hope you found this session helpful. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more fascinating stories. See you next time.